Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving into a truly fascinating 19th century parable, and we're going to look at how it perfectly mirrors modern developmental psychology when it comes to true self-discipline. We spend so much of our lives trying to build better habits, trying to resist temptations, and really just trying to become stronger versions of ourselves. But what if our basic assumptions about what discipline actually looks like are completely backward? Well, we're going to unpack a really profound story that challenges everything we think we know about restraint. And then we'll look at the hard science that backs it all up.
Okay, picture this. You're sitting at a table. On one plate, right in front of you, there is a piece of plain, dry bread. And right next to it, a completely delicious, lavish meal. Now, if you were to look at two people eating these respective meals, could you really tell who is acting more righteously just by looking at their plates? I mean, our immediate instinct is to look at the person eating the dry bread and think, wow, look at their restraint. Look at that sacrifice. We naturally associate suffering or deprivation with discipline, but as we're about to see, appearances can be incredibly deceiving.
Part 1. The Mother's Complaint.
So our story comes from the 19th Lem'a, which is a traditional text on frugality. It centers around two main individuals. On one side, we have a student, and this student is actively practicing strict self-discipline. To do so, he contents himself with eating absolutely nothing but plain, dry bread. He is denying himself pleasure to build up his spiritual fortitude. On the other side, we have his highly respected spiritual guide, the master he looks up to for guidance in restraint and piety. But here's the catch. The guide is found eating a massive, lavish meal of roasted chicken.
Cue the student's mother. And honestly, she is completely outraged by the guide's apparent lack of restraint. She marches right up to the spiritual guide and shouts, "My son is dying of hunger and you're eating chicken." It's such a relatable human reaction, isn't it? She's looking at the physical plates, exactly like we did a moment ago. She sees her son suffering for his discipline, while his supposed master is just indulging in a feast. In her eyes, the guide is totally failing the very test he's supposed to be teaching.
But okay, here is where things get wild. The spiritual guide doesn't even argue with her. Instead, he simply calls out to the chicken bones. And miraculously, they gather together, the chicken literally comes back to life, and it just walks right off the plate. It's this stunning, mystical marvel designed to basically jolt us out of our literal, everyday thinking and point toward a much deeper, hidden truth about reality.
After the chicken casually walks away, the guide turns to the mother and drops this absolute mic drop of a response. He says, "When your son reaches this same station, he too may eat chicken." This entirely flips our initial assumptions about who is actually practicing true restraint. The guide is essentially saying that his consumption of the chicken wasn't a lack of discipline at all. The student is eating dry bread because he has to. He's still in training, he's still weak, and honestly, he'd be corrupted by the temptation of that delicious meal. The guide, however, has reached a station of ultimate mastery.
Part 2. The True Meaning of Mastery.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that true discipline was literally never about the physical food. It was never about the chicken or the dry bread. It is entirely about who has mastery over what. The text explicitly outlines this hierarchy of mastery. First up, the spirit governs the body. The physical form is just no longer running the show. Second, the heart governs the ego. Selfish desires and pride are kept completely in check by a deeper emotional and spiritual center. And finally, the mind governs the stomach. Those raw, base physical appetites are entirely controlled by the intellect. When you achieve this state, you aren't fighting your desires anymore. You've conquered them.
And this brilliantly illustrates a really cool concept. Once you have that supreme internal control, delicious things can actually be enjoyed. Why? Because at that station of mastery, the motivation is pure gratitude, not base indulgence. The spiritual guide wasn't eating the chicken to satisfy some primal urge or out of gluttony. He was eating it to appreciate the provision, with his spirit, heart, and mind remaining perfectly in control the entire time. The student just wasn't there yet, which is exactly why the student still needed that dry bread.
Part 3. The Science of Self-Control. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, this is just some ancient spiritual fable, right? A nice little metaphor about monks and masters. But actually, modern developmental psychology completely backs this up. It all boils down to the concept of delayed gratification. This was famously highlighted in a 1989 study by developmental psychologist Michel, Shota, and Rodriguez, published in the prestigious journal Science. Delayed gratification is defined as the ability to delay satisfying an urge instantly in order to gain a better reward later on. And this is exactly what the student in our story was trying to learn with his dry bread: impulse control. He was actively training himself to not give in to that immediate urge for comfort.
The developmental psychology research reveals this incredibly stark contrast. On one side, giving in to an instant urge represents poor impulse control, but on the flip side, practicing delayed gratification strongly predicts a child's long-term resilience and success years and years down the line. It's amazing how perfectly this matches the 19th Lem'a's emphasis on mastery. The science is telling us that the mind governing the stomach, that ability to pause and just say no to an immediate impulse, is the foundational building block for a successful, resilient life.
Part 4. Defining Real Strength.
This brings us to a pretty powerful synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern empirical science when it comes to our own everyday lives. Whether we're looking at a 19th century parable about dry bread and roasted chicken or a 1989 developmental psychology study on impulse control, the underlying truth is identical. True strength isn't about looking like you're struggling, and it definitely isn't about permanent deprivation. It's about developing such profound internal governance, where your spirit, your heart, and your mind lead the way that you are no longer a slave to your immediate impulses. So I want you to take a hard look at the choices you make every single day. Do you think satisfying a desire instantly or being able to delay it is what really makes you stronger? Are you eating the dry bread to train your mind, or have you mastered your impulses enough to enjoy the chicken with true gratitude? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today, and I really hope it changes how you view your own journey towards self-discipline.